going to be having a couple of votes, one on my amendment number 4833 and one on the Thune amendment 4841. His is having to do with delivery systems, mine having to do with verification. And that would mean that we would have 45 minutes to talk about this. We've already covered it pretty thoroughly. I just think that we need to have an understanding of what we're talking about in terms of verification. There are only 180 inspections that are authorized by the New START Treaty, and that's over a 10-year period. So we're talking about 18 per year versus the 600 inspections over 15 years in START 1. Well, if you do your math there, that would be 40 a year in START 1 and down to 18 a year in START 2, or in New START. Well, one of the arguments for that is that we have fewer sites to inspect. And for that reason, we don't need to have as many inspections. And I would just disagree with that pretty strongly. One thing that all the experts seem to have in common in agreeing is that once you get down to fewer sites, that the verification becomes more important. John Bolton had said on the 3rd of May, he said, while verification is important in any arms control treaty, it becomes even more important at lower warhead levels. And I think they all agree. Brent Scowcroft said the same thing. He said current force levels provide a kind of buffer because they are high enough to be relatively insensitive to imperfect intelligence and modest force changes. As force levels go down, the balance of nuclear power can become increasingly delicate and vulnerable to cheating on arms control limits. Concerns about hidden missiles and other actions. So he's saying the same thing. James Baker said the same thing. He said that, when testifying just recently, that the New START verification program does not appear as rigorous or extensive as the one that verified the numerous and diverse treaty obligations and prohibitions under START 1. This complex part of the treaty is even more crucial when fewer deployed nuclear warheads are allowed than were allowed in the past. You just do your math and it figures out. If you have 10 warheads that you are going to be inspecting and they hide one, that's just 10% of them. If it gets down to 2 and they hide one, that's 50% of them. And that's what they're saying, that we need to have more, not less. And of course, this is less. In fact, if you do the math a little bit further, as was said by the senator from Massachusetts, he said, and I'm quoting him now, so I think it's one thing to ask our strategic forces to do that 10 times a year or less than once a month. It's another thing for them to be waiting for 30 inspections a year. We have, again, quoting him, we have 2 submarine bases, 3 bombers bases, and 3 ICBM bases. Now, on the other hand, Russia has 3, and 12. So they actually have 18, and we would have 8, which means, if you do the math further, that they would be able to inspect ours, one site every 2 years, while we would only be able to inspect every 2 years. They'd be inspecting it every 1 year. And so that's the reason that we should be doing this. And the other thing is, and that people keep forgetting about it because it's not fun to talk about, but the fact is that they cheat and we don't. And this has been, everyone has talked about this. You know, we have something that was set up to try to measure who is cheating, who is not cheating. We had the START Treaty's Joint Compliance and Inspection Commission. That commission reported, they actually had 2 reports. One report was in 2005, one in 2010. The report in 2005 that was on biological weapons convention in the State Department concluded, and I'm quoting from the report of 2005, Russia maintains a mature offensive biological weapons program, and that is its nature and status have not changed. Well, that was after it had been enforced for 5 years. That was 2005. Now, in 2010, that same commission comes back, and the report states Russia's confidence-building measure declarations since 1992 have not satisfactorily documented whether its biological weapons program was terminated. So again, we have the biological weapons program that was reported in 2005 and 2010, saying that the program is not, they're not complying with it. In other words, they're cheating. That's, you know, if you sign an agreement and you don't do it, then you're cheating. That makes sense. Chemical weapons, same thing. In 2005, the State Department assessed that Russia is in violation of its Chemical Weapons Convention, the obligations, because its declaration was incomplete with respect to declaration of production and development facilities. So that's what they said in 2005, that they're cheating on the chemical weapons obligations that they made, their treaty obligations. Then that same commission in 2010, still talking about chemical weapons, said the State Department again stated that there was an absence of additional information from Russia, resulting in the United States being unable to ascertain whether Russia has declared all of its chemical weapons stockpile, all chemical weapons production facilities, and all of its chemical weapons development facilities. So again, they state in 2010 that they're still cheating. So it's always difficult when you look at these. The senator from Massachusetts said, well, wait a minute now, we have to do the same thing that they have to do, and under your amendment, if we're going to have 3 times as many inspections, then we have to do 3 times as many, and they have to do 3 times as many. We have to prepare for them here. I said, yeah, that's my point. We need to have more inspections, and we want these inspections to take place. And we want to be sure that the Russians also adhere to their commitment for inspections, which they have never done in the past. So when you look at this, we see that there are problems with this. And I don't think when you talk about using the argument that we can't change something because you're changing the treaty, you know, I think that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be involved in the treaty. The senator from Massachusetts was talking about the number of people that were involved in this thing, the military and all these others putting this thing together. Well, guess who was left out? Us. And that's what the Constitution under Article 2, Section 2 says, that we in the Senate are supposed to ratify the advise and consent. Well, we've been advised, but we haven't consented yet, and that's what this is all about. So the process works this way. If we do pass an amendment, such as my amendment that will be voted on in just a few minutes to triple the number of inspections, that would change the treaty. And I understand that. That means it'll have to go back to the Duma in Russia, and they then would have to look at the treaty and decide whether or not that they would agree with it, and if not, have them make a change. Then it comes back to us. It goes back and forth, and this is what our forefathers had anticipated would happen, because of all the people that they talk about, the senator from Massachusetts talks about, who are drafting this, the one thing they all have in common, they're not answerable to the people. We are. You know, we're both elected. I say to the chair, he was elected, I was elected, and therefore we are the ears and the eyes and the confirmation of the public. And I think that's our constitutional obligation. It's very clearly stated. So we do have serious problems. One thing that's kind of in the weeds and a little bit complicated. When you talk about my amendment that triples the number of inspections under the New START from the types under the START 1 treaty, we had 2 types of inspections. This is critical. Type 1 refers to inspections of the IBM bases, submarine bases, air bases. These are the delivery systems to demonstrate very clearly that we are going to be able to look at those sites and see if they're carrying out their obligations under the treaty. But Type 2 refers to inspections at formally declared facilities. Now they say that we have more inspections right now. Well, that's because we didn't even have Type 2 facilities in START 1 treaty, because when you talk about formally declared facilities, we're talking about facilities that were closed down. And so we want to inspect to make sure that they are closed down. So the test that they use to see whether or not they're closed down is that they talk about debris. That's how you satisfy to see whether it's Type 2 sites have been treated properly. Well, you know, they can have debris left over from closing one site and then close 5 and then leave 5 open that are supposed to be closed and scatter the debris around and use it again. There's been testimony that that's what they would do. Now, I'd be glad to yield, since we're going to have 2 votes coming up at 6 o'clock on the Thune amendment as well as my amendment, if the senator from South Dakota would like to talk about his, and then I'd be glad to resume my discussion.
Mr. President.
Senator from South Dakota.
Thank the senator from Oklahoma for yielding some time. We're going to vote on his amendment and on